One of the biggest questions that I am discussing in my research is, can you claim or reclaim an indigenous identity if you don't live on your indigenous homelands, your ancestral homelands, and you weren't born on your ancestral homelands? This is a sticky subject for a lot of reasons, and there is a lot of heavy debate and a lot of different opinions, and I think a great many of them are incredibly valid, which of course makes attempting to answer, or at the very least discuss this question, a very difficult thing to do. Many indigenous scholars and people argue that indigeneity is not just about location. It's about customs, practices, language, food pathways, traditions that have been carried out and continued for time immemorial. But it is also greatly about the land. And so me, a white American who is in the process of reclaiming and exploring her Sami roots, this is a bit of a conundrum. Another problem with indigenous identity, and identities in general, is that at some point, governments, colonial powers, states, districts, the church, a great number of things changed the identity of your ancestors. Sometimes your ancestors changed their own identity, often out of safety. For example, many Norwegians, or I should say, many Sami in the Norwegian state were only allowed to own land if they changed their last name to a Norwegian one. Add migration, forced or otherwise, into the mix, and all of a sudden you have a plethora of discontinuity. And for many of us, you will never get a straightforward, clear-cut answer. Are you or aren't you? Is it just family lore? Is it just a bunch of strange items and objects and stories and songs and people coming to your house and certain kinds of foods and beliefs? Or is it not? And the difficulty in reclamation in these circumstances is how you approach it. Not just to tread lightly, though you should, but to be open to the possibility that maybe you are wrong. Now, thankfully, we have other ways of knowing that are not just through the brain, through a series of facts. There are embodied ways of knowing and being. And if you feel something truly in your heart, you should explore what that is. There's another added layer. As I stand in this land that I have never been to before, the other added layer is that in North America specifically, in the Americas, there are already indigenous people living here. And the number one missing and murdered group of women and girls are indigenous Americans. So what does that mean as a white person to attempt to reclaim, uncover, explore an indigenous identity? I almost just fell. What does that mean? It's nuanced and it's layered. And you have to have a sensitivity and an awareness to the violence that is perpetrated against Indigenous Americans here and now, not just historically, here and now. How many Indigenous Americans are in ICE custody? If Indigenous Americans had a nice, lovely, cushy, nothing ever went wrong, nothing bad ever happened, nothing bad's happening now, maybe your identity reclamation might look different. But these are the facts. This is the world that we live in. At the same time, and part of the point of this video, I'm just giving you some context, right? Part of our biggest problem is that we are so disconnected from who we are, where we come from, and the land in general. Now, pagans typically, I'm saying typically, I'm speaking in a broad stroke, pagans, part of their spiritual philosophy, or just philosophy of belief, is an inherent connection to the land, a worship of the land as the holder and the keeper. But I have seen some dialogue recently, some questions of, well, there's a lot of worship and honoring of the land, but is anyone actually doing anything to protect the land? Let's let the silence go on for a little bit. I can think of a few, but when I step back, it really is just a few. And that's a problem. I think part of our big problem is this disconnection, as I said. And I always encourage everyone, but as a white woman, sometimes I'm speaking specifically to you, white person, it is important that you discover what your lineage is. Not as a way to put yourself in a category somewhere or whatever, because even, I'll just use like Italian as an example, I don't know. If you're Italian and you discover practices, cultural, spiritual, food pathways, belief systems, ceremonies, rituals of Italian people, you can still cause harm in the way that you reappropriate those practices. And there is still a disconnection between yourself here and Italy over there, for example. So what do we do about that? Does that mean that we just shouldn't do anything at all? I don't think so. I think there's a great many things that we should do. And when I was thinking about making this video, I had more coherent thoughts. And then I got down to this creek, and I'm full of whimsy. So you'll have to excuse me if I go on a bit of tangents, and many tangents. But I think it is crucial that we Americans, especially white Americans, people in the West, reclaim their ancestry and their ancestral practices and bring them current to the situation that we are in here and now. We can never go back. You know, there's this romanticization of going back. And usually what that does is it just others people further or turns people into these romantic colonial ideas of who they are and what they represent and what they might be. But we're never going back. Even the people, even my own people living on their own ancestral lands in Norway, they're not going back to before the kingdoms of Norway and Sweden said, let's cut her up. Let's just cut up and split up the land. Oh yeah, we've got a bunch of stuff available up north. Oh, you can't cross over these borders anymore. So some of you will die before you ever see your family again. We can't go back to before that happened. Practices go underground, beliefs go underground. They become syncretized with whatever the colonial power might be, but they are still there. And it's important that we reclaim them, not just as a way of healing ourselves and healing people in our lineage, past and present, because we are in a cycle, just in a circle, baby. But we have become so disconnected from the land and the other than human beings. And I firmly believe this lack of connection, this disconnection, is why we have so many freaking problems and why we don't feel anything when we drop bombs somewhere else. But we get all up in arms if someone comes here to make a better living for their families. We have lost our connection to one another. We've lost it. We've lost our connection to this sandy, weird, clay-like soil that I have never experienced before. This wonder and amazement at something new. I grew up in New York. I'm a New Yorker through and through. I've lived in New York my whole life, except for like 2 years in New Jersey. I am now in Texas, standing in a clay ground creek. What does it mean to learn the land here? What does it mean to connect to the land here? How do we build practices into our bodies of connection to the land no matter where we go? Robin Wall Kimmerer in Braiding Sweetgrass, if you haven't read it, please do. There's an audiobook also. If you have a Spotify premium membership, you can listen to it there. You know, I know, Spotify, another freaking... We are full of corporations of greed. But I say that to say it is accessible. She says something to the effect, I'm going to butcher the words exactly and I apologize, but she says something to the effect of, we are all indigenous to somewhere. And what do we do about where we're living now? How do we tend to the land we're living on now? How do we become stewards of the land and live in right relationship with the land and all of the beings that are here? Well, if you're disconnected from yourself, how could you possibly try to connect to someone else in a way that's not just serving your emotional, physical, mental needs in some way? How can I connect to this weird sandy clay soil? This looks like a rock. I don't think it's a rock. I was slipping and sliding. It's not moss. How do you build a practice in your body that no matter where you go, you can live in right relationship with yourself and everything else? Everyone else, I should say. Because this creek is alive. These trees are alive. This clay soil is alive. And we have forgotten that. They did a number on us. Forget your customs, forget your language, forget who you are, where you come from. You're American now. What does it really mean to be American? We talk about freedom. Whose freedom? At the expense of what? At the expense of who? What are they saying now? Like empathy is like a terrible thing or something? What do you mean? What are we sacrificing? What parts of ourselves are we sacrificing? And who wins? Because we have lost all of the parts of ourselves. We reach for everyone else's that still survived. Because we don't know how to look for our own. But I also call bullshit on that because I think that's just laziness. You don't want to get an ancestry DNA, I hear you. You don't have to do that shit. Go to the library. Find a local historian. Go to one of those public archive things. If your family came through Ellis Island or some other shit, there's a record of it. Where did you come from? Guess what else we have? Google. Google exists. And also, like, the Mormon church has like a really strange, extensive list of like family lineages. I found myself on there and I was like, why am I here? None of us are Mormon. That I know of. Whatever. The point of the matter is you can find where you come from. You can find where you come from. All right, well, okay, Freya, I found where I come from. Now what? I come from fucking Wales. All right, cool. Read some folklore. Read some myth. Listen to some traditional songs. Google the translation. Let it wash over you. Listen to the language that feels foreign and yet somehow familiar. Let it wash over you and into you. Watch a freaking Welsh TV series. Look at some art. Google famous Welsh art. Get to know yourself. Now, that doesn't change the fact that we don't live somewhere where our ancestors came from, and we may never even set foot there. So I go back to Robin Wall Kimmerer. I go back to, where are you right now, and what are you doing to be a community member? Not just to the people who need you the most, but to the land in which you inhabit. Do you drive down the road and throw your trash out the window? Do you do a basketball shot at a park and you miss and then you don't pick it up? It's really shitty, man. Do you go to public places and parks and fucking nature places and leave your stuff everywhere? I'm also speaking to you, pagans. Do you bring salt outside and leave it on the ground? What's wrong with you? Do you leave candle wax outside? Do you leave any other objects that could harm animals? That doesn't seem very reverent to me. I may never be able to answer the question of if one could consider themselves to be indigenous when they were not born or live on their ancestral homelands, if their practices, their cultural practices, their spiritualities, their food and language pathways were disconnected. I may never have that answer, or I will never have a satisfactory answer, because some people will tell me no, absolutely not. Other people might say yes, you're rebuilding them, you're reconnecting, you're reestablishing. I think the answer is more somewhere in between. There was discontinuity. There was a disconnection. Can't ignore that. Your ancestors either were forced to hide, they chose to hide, they chose to change and transform. We'll never know all of the circumstances surrounding what our families had to do to get us to where we are right now. But by not uncovering and reappropriating, not appropriating, I've got a paper on that somewhere. By reappropriating and rematriating that knowledge, we become stronger, more whole, healthy, healed people. And then we can spread that out to everything else. So, that brings me to the crux of this video that I just was inspired to do this like 20 minutes ago. My hair's not washed. I feel pretty gross. I'm down in the creek. I'm a swamp witch, creek witch. I'm a bog body. And I love it, and it's beautiful, and I'm not complaining. we have to learn to listen and communicate with the land that we're on. Not just so it can give us something. This creek can't, I don't know, I can't like grow zucchini in the creek. Like I can't just, what I mean to say is like, I cannot and should not enter into a relationship with this creek just so it can give me something. That is a false pretense, and it will come back to bite you. Look around. If every relationship we enter under the guise of community and friendship, but really we want something, it will come back for us. And it already is. You should enter into relationship with the soil, the land, the beings around you, because you are part of everything. Western philosophical thought, which is the bedrock of our society in the West, along with Christianity, teaches this concept of power over. Not power with, not community with, but power over. And with power over, so too is their God. You look up there, some big sky daddy, and he looks down on you, and he passes judgment on you, and he gives you a set of rules. He controls you, though, there's some doctrine, of course, about free will and making your own choices. But if your own choices are sinful and you're going to hell, well, the alternative is to maybe not do that, right? And then if you commit a sin, you can simply say a couple of Hail Marys, feel really contrite. That's what contrition is, right? A couple of Our Fathers. What is it? The Apostles' Creed, right? And then you're fine. Don't do it again. Of course, I guess there are things that are unforgivable, right? So then you go to the waiting room before you can get into heaven. Hopefully enough people pray for you. If that is what is instilled, embedded into our society, whether we are Christian or not, it is the bedrock of our Western society. Power over. Soul goes somewhere else. Then we are already inherently growing up with this idea that I have power over this land, power over these animals, power over whoever I decide is not as good as me. And I'll just, do what I want. Since my goal is to not be here anymore, part of this ecosystem, part of this cycle of life, my goal is to get up there, is to go somewhere else. This is all just hell. This sucks, and I have to toil away and work hard and do all these things, and it doesn't matter if I'm unhappy, as long as I have faith and I can be given the glory of heaven. Well, then why the hell would I care about this creek? Why the hell would I care about an inchworm, or the bees, or the flowers, or the hummingbirds, or a piranha, or some other animal that I'm never freaking thinking about, because who cares? I'm not an animal, I'm a human. I've got something to tell you. You too are an animal. If none of that matters because I've got power over and I want to go up there anyway, then I'm not going to build a relationship with this land at all. And that's our frickin' problem. So I invite you today, at the end of my rant, I invite you today to enter into relationship with whatever land you are on. There are so many ways you can do this. I'm just going to give you one, and it's going to start with you. I want you tonight, maybe today, maybe right now, and I'm going to give us a minute after I'm done talking. So you have no excuse. Let the video keep playing. You have a whole minute to do it. Sit in silence and listen. Yes, you might have thoughts. This is a practice. If you can get outside, great. If you're in an apartment, if you live in a city and you're just seeing concrete, use the power of your imagination. Listen to your body. Listen to your breath. Listen to the wind. Listen to your dog breathe or your cat purr. Listen. Deep, deep, reverent listening. You are part of this earth, not power over, power with, community with. You are no better than a snail. You're both beautiful. I'm going to let this creek water play for a minute. And I just want you to sit and do nothing else but notice and breathe. And let me know how that was. And every day this week, just a minute. And don't tell me you don't have the time. You're scrolling on your phone. Don't tell me you don't have a minute, because I know you do. We can heal ourselves and each other and this world together. It is not too late. But it starts with remembering. Remember who you are, where you came from, and what they had to do to make you forget. It's okay to be angry, but then do something. I love you. 1 minute starts now.